In this video, I'm going to show you how we can configure different methods of routing between the PE and CE for one customer. For example, you know that in previous videos, we learned how we can configure same method of routing between the PE and CE for one customer. We learned about the configuration of static routing between the PE and CE, RIP version 2 between the PNC or OSPF or EIGRP, ISIS and also eBGP. But in this video, I am going to show you how you can configure, for example, for customer A in site 1 static routing and in site 2 RIP version 2. Or for example, for customer B in one site, we are using EIGRP between the PNC and we are using another method of routing, for example, OSPF between the next P and C. Maybe in most cases you encounter with a company that uses the same routing protocols in in its sites, but in some cases we have a large companies that in every site maybe we experience different method of routing. Because of that, we are using different method of routing between the P and C. In this scenario, I am going to talk about this, and this is a practice for us because we learn about the configuration of this static routing, RIP, OSPF, EIGRP, ISIS or eBGP in previous videos. Now we can use all of the experiences that we learned in the previous video in one scenario. Okay, this is a practice for us and we need to configure this scenario from scratch. Because of that, I'm going to use a notepad file for easier configuration. Let me to start with configuration from router 1 from the service provider. After that, step by step, we can add the features to the, for example, our scenario. This is the notepad file for this scenario, MPLS layer 3 VPN with various IGP or BGP between the P and C. Starting from router 1. In router 1, you know that we need to configure some things. First is host name is R1 and then interface, okay, ETH00. The IP address of this interface is 10.121.255.255.255.0 and then no shutdown. As you can see here, I am using the OSPF as the IGP routing protocol in this scenario. Because of that, let me to use these commands here: IP OSPF network, then point to point. That's it. And then we can configure IP OSPF, for example, 1 area 0. This is the ETH00's configuration. Also, we have interface loopback 0 in the router 1 with the IP address of the quad 1, quad 255, the IP address of this interface, and then the OSPF routing protocol should be enabled on this interface, IP OSPF 1 area 0. Also, we need to configure router OSPF 1 with the router ID 192.168.2541, and also we can configure MPLS LDP02 config. Let me to change the MPLS label range, here, and then it can be between 100 and 199. This is the configuration of R1 for the OSPF and also for the MPLS. Then we need to configure R1 for example, VRF. Let me to configure VRFs. Here we have 3 VRF A1, B1 and C1. If you want, you can use VRF A, B or C. Okay, let me to use the newest method, VRF definition, then for example A, and then RD 65,000:1 for this for example VRF, and after that address family IPv4 unicast, and next we need to use route target both 65,000:1. That's it. And then we need to configure two other VRFs, VRF B and also VRF C. This is the VRF A and then VRF B. And after that, we have another VRF, VRF C. In VRF B, we are using 65,000:2 as the for example, RD, and in VRFC we are using RD 65,000:3. Also for road target, both import and export, we are using the, for example, in VRFB we are using road target both 65,000:2, and in VRFC we are using road target both 65,000:3. 3. This is the VRF definition in the router 1. Then we can configure different methods of routing in every VRF. But let me first assign the interfaces, the VRFs to interfaces. First, we have the interface ETH01, this interface, okay? We need to assign VRF A to this interface, VRF forwarding, for example, A. And after that, the IP address assignment, IP address, then 10.151.255.255.255.0, and after that, no shutdown. This is the configuration of the interface ETH01, and after that, we can configure interface ETH02 and also ETH03. Look at here, this is the 02 and this is the 03. After that, we are forwarding B on the interface ETH02 and we are forwarding C on the interface ETH03. The IP address of the ETH02 is 10.161.255.255.255.0, and the IP address of the ETH03 is 10.191, okay? And then, for example, 255.255.255.0. This is the IP addressing of this tree interface. Also, we need to configure different method of routing for these VRFs. First, for VRF A, we need to configure a static routing. As you can see here, we can use this command IP route for the 192.168.10.255.255.255.0 10.155. But you know that here we need to use VRFA. This means that now R1 can reach to these networks, because of that can redistribute the static routing into its BGP, and after that BGP can send the update to the next router. And then we have EIGRP between the router 1 and router 6 in the VRFB. Let me to use router, okay, EIGRP, for example, a name, we can use SP, means service provider. And here we are using address family, IPv4, unicast, for example, in VRFB, okay, because this is for VRFB. And then we can configure the autonomous system, the autonomous system of number of the VRFB, 65,002. Okay, that's it. And then we need to enable EIGRP on this interface network 10.161 quad 0. Okay, we configured network 10.161, and you know that we need to configuring redistributing BGP into this EIGRP in the topology base. Okay, I configured all of these features in the previous video, and if you need, you should review the EIGRP scenario, topology base, and then redistribute, for example, BGP 65,000. After that, we need to configure metric values in EIGRP, for example, 1000, then 10 to 1,500. This is the MTU. And now we configured EIGRP in router 1, and also we need to configure ISIS in the router 1 for VRFC. The configuration of ISIS is so easy. You can use router ISIS, for example, SP, or router ISIS customer C, because here we have only one ISIS. If you want, you can don't configure the ISIS tag. Let me to use router ISIS only, and this is for VRFC, so easy. Then we need to configure net address 49.0.0.1. Assume that these routers are level 2 ISIS routers, 49.0.0.0.1, and then quad 0, and after that 0.0.0.1.0.0. That's it. Then we can configure IS type level 2, and after that we can configure log adjacency change all. That's it. If you want, you can configure metric style wide. This is recommended. And after that, here now we configured the router ISIS. You know that we need to redistributing BGP 65,000 to this ISIS process, and this is the configuration of ISIS in this router. The next things and the last things that we should configure is the BGP configuration in router 1. Okay, let me to start the configuration of the BGP in router 1 with the router BGP 65,000, no BGP default IPv4, then unicast. The neighbor here we have another P router 192.168.254, and then for example remote AS. The remote AS number is 65,000 again, and also neighbor we can configure